You're still watching the European Roundtables, and there are 4 value tracks, and one of the value tracks is the personalized medicine, which was talked about in the session we just had. And we have some persons here who will talk a little bit more about that. And the first before our camera is Bart de Lathouwer from Open Geospatial Consortium. Welcome, Bart.
Hey.
Could you explain to us or to the viewers what the Open Geospatial Consortium is or does? Or
Sure, absolutely. And great to be here with you for the interview. The Open Geospatial Consortium, or OGC, and we like to think that the C stands for cool. We're a collective problem-solving body where we bring together the experts on location and the users of location, and to fulfill our mission of making data and geospatial data fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And in order to do that, we produce open consensus-based standards and best practices on how to implement them. And these open standards are already worldwide in use for policy in the United States, in Europe, in Japan, in all parts of the world. Think of environmental reporting, the INSPIRE directive here in Europe, but also think of Earth observation systems, satellites, that are used in a variety of systems. Think agriculture, smart agriculture, on how these Earth observation systems, how they provide that data, the format, the functions that we use to access them, and how we treat them in the cloud. And so all that is what the members come together, 550 worldwide. Wow. We're very proud to have the academia, the private sector, and the public sector coming together in the OGC on neutral ground. Okay. And so there's you can come to the OGC, ask questions without setting expectations that you're going to buy or sell. It's what we call ourselves as that neutral body. And passionate about everything related to location.
To location. So. Yes, because today one of the topics was the personalized medicine. Yeah. Personalized, we're talking about people. Yeah. Talking about people is talking about privacy. I already heard you say something about the open standards, etc. Yeah. I think there comes a lot of legislation or questions or privacy issues.
The privacy issues do come up. Now they're well covered under current legislation. What we look on is the sister of privacy is what I call ethics. Okay. The ethical use of location. My phone is charging right now, so I can't I can't show it to you right now. But I'm using the iPhone, and each time you launch a new app, is how can we use your location? Is it just once? And so it has become a very hot topic in our industry on the ethical use, the right use, that you as the carrier of the phone can decide how you want to share that information. Yeah. And so
you have to have ownership of your data, of your information, of your location. Actually.
Absolutely, because this is intrinsically something very private. To your initial comment.
But when you're talking about medicine and about threats like the pandemic, like COVID, I have ownership. I can decide whether or not I'd like to share my location. But then I come in a situation where I don't know that I need to share my location. You understand what I'm saying? I can't be asked because there's somebody infected around me, and I don't know. So I cannot actively give access to my location, but I want to be warned.
True. Now that's, I'm not the expert on how to share personalized information. Okay. Let there be no doubt. But it is ultimately something, it's you have to share some information for the good of society. So the COVID app that we have, I'm out of Belgium, you do share, anonymously location. So it's the combination of yourself on location at time that makes it sensitive information. The location itself is totally harmless. Yeah. The individual, most of us are totally harmless.
Most of us, yeah.
If you believe the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that is. And time itself, it's the combination that makes it privacy sensitive. So, But, in health, the location aspect is with COVID has become very relevant. And so we have now an active group in the OGC that is chaired by a medical doctor that sees the essence of bringing in the location aspect into medicine and personalized health.
Yeah. In a session, I heard you give an example about London and the breakout
of cholera outbreak, which initially they thought that it was through aerosols, which wasn't the case at all. It was one pump in London and on Broad Street that was the source of cholera. And by plotting it on a map, John Snow was able to just determine it and remove the handle from the water pump, and so it was inoperable. And so that was
rather important discovery.
It was a very important discovery, and just by putting all that data on a map gave you that insight.
Okay.
Was a previous speaker, and he'll be in your show later on, that called it geomedicine.
Okay.
And so I think that's exactly what we'd like to contribute to. Like we said, we contribute to space, we contribute to health, to agriculture, aviation, you name it. I think health is one of the next ones up. Yeah. That is ripe for
health is the momentum right now. Now everybody is willing to sacrifice their privacy for the better, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So is to share that location information, but not just from a privacy point of view, but also in the wider aspect of how do you navigate a hospital? Yeah. And how do you navigate a hospital for someone that has dementia?
And looking at your field of work, what are the big hurdles, and what would you wish for the future to be different, a call to action? Or
I think we live in gigantically interesting times. There's a data deluge, right? There's so much information that we need to bring together, and the stars are aligning. And now it's how do you seamlessly bring that data together? The statistical data, the location information, the previous, we can all bring that together for decision making in a variety of fields, so that we as a society understand better how we operate amongst ourselves, but also look at this in terms of climate, digital twinning. Yeah. For climate we need to understand how this Earth works. Yeah. We kind of sort of know how it works, but we need to get better at it in order to find solutions and how we're going to deal with it. It's there, we need to deal with it. Similarly, in the same vein, is severe weather. We had an awful spring. Yeah. I didn't go outside. My vitamin D levels are negative. But weather now is getting more severe, and so we need to deal with that as well.
So very complex issues with a lot of different stakeholders and a lot of decentralized information and knowledge, actually. And so the big hurdle will be bringing together.
Together, right? So we live in an age where all the data lives in the cloud. We're going to go to an age where it's cloudless. Okay. So where clouds are going to interoperate. That's what we're putting the specifications, we're testing it in our innovation lab. So we create the standard, and then we eat our own dog food to see if it actually works. Okay. And and then if it doesn't work, fix it and go through it again. It really is that interoperability of data. If we cannot have all the data that's coming out there to be interoperable, we're going to waste time, but we're going to waste energy. To yesterday's session, we're wasting energy on computing cycles of transforming data from format A into format B, which...
Yeah, because that's always my statement is that we don't have one cloud. We have so many clouds.
Oh, that's it, right?
It's in the cloud. No, I wish it was in one cloud, but it's in the...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the definition of the cloud, right? It's just someone else's computer. Yeah.
Indeed.
They sit in the cloud. There's major cloud operators, and they come to the OGC. Yeah. The next step is making that cloudless so that, we can interoperate between clouds. Clear. Because there's so much data out there, and you haven't, the increase of data is exponential. Yeah. And it's not going to stop.
No,
It's going to keep on growing. It's going to more and more. So from that perspective, it's we live in golden ages.
Yeah, but a challenge to shift the good and useful data from the other data and then use it in a useful way.
Yeah, turn that data into information and then ultimately wisdom.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Well, thank you very much for this insight, and thank you very much for being here at our table, and all the best of luck, and keep an eye for it in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bart de Lathouder from Open Geospatial Consortium here at our table at the European Roundtables, where we speak about personalized medicine. And here we spoke a little bit about all the data that was in the cloud, how we collect all that data, etc. But we'll also speak with Ron Herings. He is entrepreneur at Pharmo, but also professor of pharmacoepidemiology and healthcare optimization at the Amsterdam UMC. Welcome, Ron.
Fine, thank you.
Did I mention everything?
You did mention everything. Thank you for the introduction. Yes,
you're very welcome. Could you, in a few sentences, clarify what exactly it is that you do? I mean, I gave you all those great titles. But...
Yes, fantastic. Thank you. Well, I think that one of the challenges we have in personalized healthcare is how to bring it to the people. And to do that, you need actually three things. You need a huge data infrastructure to develop actually algorithms. You need the smart people who can make algorithms, who understand algorithms. It's not only the technique, but you also need the medical doctors to make the algorithms. And the third one is you need actually an organization who can implement it in practice. So you as the patient can use actually that personalized healthcare, because the trick is not that everybody should be personalized, but you should know who should be personalized and when.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you see the pandemic now we have about the COVID, it's actually there is no need to vaccinate everybody, but you need to know who should be vaccinated because he is at high risk. And the second one is, how do you do that? How do you let doctors use that information they have already at their desk, that they can actually selectively vaccinate? If you do that, we would have actually saved hundreds, thousands of patients going to the hospital or death. And the challenges you have actually is that in the space of the data, you have that cloud issue you mentioned before, as that everybody gives access to the data, but nobody knows where. So you have to organize it into a kind of a patient dossier, which is quite sensitive, and therefore there are a lot of regulations about it. And fortunately, we now have the GDPR, which actually gives some force to the patients that they can control how data come into their personal dossier.
So you don't see the GDPR as a threat, but as a...
No, it's an advantage.
Okay, that's nice.
It's an advantage because we're talking about highly sensitive data, and we talk about algorithms. They influence your health, and they should be good. It should be the best you can do.
Yeah.
So we don't need to have algorithms which kill you off. That's of course
care of bias algorithm.
That's exaggerated. The second hurdle is actually, it's not a hurdle, it's an advantage that we have doctors who know a lot, and you can combine doctors and help them with their own generated data to develop the algorithm. So you have to collaborate with academics, which is a challenge in itself because they are hardly in competition. And also the financials for research are quite limited to do that. And the last part is most often the overlooked part, which is the most difficult part, is that if you have developed that algorithm and you have developed that device, how then you get it into current practice? Because it should also be reimbursed. It should also be it should also frame in the ethical framework what my foregoing was saying, and that's very difficult. Moreover, there is a fourth place, is that patient can put actually their own data into these data space by eHealth or by other organizations. So these patients' dossier, they are going to exist in the future of the clinical data, but also by the patient-generated data, the patient-reported data. And that's what my company did the past years, is that we have a special organization for holding the data. We have a separate organization for studying drugs, and we do this together with all kinds of companies in Europe. And the third one is in a special company who implement actually the algorithms into practice.
Okay.
And of course, what you are hoping to do is that you can open up such an organizations to others, because it can help people who are very good in developing AI algorithms. You can give them access to these databases. But therefore, you need, of course, regulations, because you cannot give anybody access. And that makes it very difficult. That if you have these type of structures and you can and know and do the trick, who should have be access and who not?
Yeah. Because I think that there's a tension in the free market, that you have so many regulations that the government comes in with some kind of standardization, and there's a risk of giving some advantages to certain companies and leaving behind some other companies. I mean, you can't let everybody on the market, right? You want some kind of standardization of algorithms and programs.
It's health, it's sensitive, it cannot be open. Your information cannot be open, but you can contribute as a patient to the betterment of patient care by giving somebody who has a technical solution access to the data.
Yeah.
And that you should regulate, because there are a lot of cowboys around who want to use these data for commercial reasons.
Yeah.
And therefore it should be regulated. So
yeah, because I can imagine that, like for instance, in a hospital, if I go to a hospital, say I have my personalized medical information on this app or this program or this website, and somebody else has it on another app or another program or another organization. That's difficult. You want
that is very complex, because as a patient you assume that your GP or your doctor knows exactly what they did with you before, but they don't, because some information is in a hospital, others are at a GP desk, otherwise some information you didn't tell him.
Yeah.
And because when he wants to give you a good treatment, you need to organize your data somehow into a personal dossier.
And you like all the hospitals to use the same data programs.
Yes, and that should, of course, heavily protected, because that's quite normal, because you don't want to put it on a marketplace. What you actually want is, I give you my data, please apply some techniques and help me for my treatment. Yeah. Prevention or not prevention. And actually what we could and can do with these structures, we can be much earlier in life. So that's actually the most important thing of these personalized health training. Suppose we could predict that you will react good to a drug and that your neighbor would have another drug. Yeah. Suppose we know that you are going to become sick and there is a treatment available. Can we treat you earlier in life?
Yeah.
Suppose we know that you get an adverse drug reaction from these data, and therefore you get another drug than the one was intended to. When we personalize that treatment, we win enormously in efficiency.
Yeah.
And can we do this? Yes. Are these things available in our country? Yes. What we cannot do, or what we are not good to, is in organizing actually all these different parts into a central organ, because you need that to control for that openness. What you need actually to help to attract people with brains who can work on the artificial and intelligent things, because these people, you should bother them with all kinds of regulations.
That's where I think the balance should be, like innovative companies having freedom and regulations and rules.
Therefore you go to a collaboration between actually not the academics, but you need the academics actually for the knowledge. Yeah. But you need to professionalize all these different aspects into a single organization which can give access to regulators, to companies, whatever. Yeah. And they do that. For instance, in Canada, they have done that. Okay. So it's possible, it's doable. In Europe, we have, of course, the challenge, that's just to answer questions, that we are with 27 different countries, with 27 different languages and 27 different healthcare systems and regulations. So
if you would have your call to action in one sentence to the viewers, what would that be?
Help us to open up these kind of structures to facilitate research, to make new algorithms that can be the package insert of services and drugs for the future.
Clear. Well, thank you very much, Ron Herings. That was Ron Herings, Professor Pharmacoepidemiology and Healthcare Optimization at the Amsterdam University, UMC, and entrepreneur for Pharmo, talking about personalized medicine, about the data, the algorithms, about privacy, and all these subjects that are so important for this session. And in the meantime, at the table, we have Katinka de Korte, entrepreneur from Dear Health. Welcome, Katinka. Thank you so much for being here. Dear Health, could you explain to us what kind of company that is? What do you do?
Well, Dear Health is a artificial intelligence-led care pathway solution. So what we deliver is a digital platform for the providers, so the healthcare providers, and a patient app for the patient. And what we actually do is processing the data that is in clinical practice. So most of it is in the electronic patient record, but other valuable data can be added to the data model once it's validated that it does have an impact on the disease-specific treatments. And we use the patient data that is uploaded from the patient's environment themselves. So now we are living in the daily practice where patients upload their data themselves, but in the very near future, there will be sensors, there will be all full seamless digital tools that will generate the patient data without actually uploading data yourself.
Giving an example, I come in the room and they measure my temperature or something like that?
Something like that, or you look in the mirror and the mirror is taking the data and you only validate that the data is correct and can be uploaded in your patient app.
Okay.
So other solutions that I'm thinking of right now is a company that is developing a sensor for in the toilets where biomarkers out of your urine can be taken out and that can be uploaded. And of course,
no more pregnancy tests.
And, yeah, and those data experiences are actually what we are looking for. And so we are delivering a care pathway solution where we need collaboration with all kinds of partners, data partners, and we have a prerequisite for that they are delivering fair data, because then we know for sure the data is of the quality that we need. And what we actually generate with all the data from the patient and the evidence-based data that is linked to a specific disease is recommending a accurate care pathway. And that is decision support for the medical teams. Okay. So it's not a black box software that is telling you what is the best for you and you have to hope that that's the best for you. But we're generating a care pathway that is out there for the medical teams to accept or to reject or to adjust. Once it is accepted, the patient sees in the patient's app a 12-month care pathway with all the activities and all the advices in there, and is in control of their own treatment. And once something changes, for instance, pregnancy, of course that is of a huge impact once you have maybe not one disease, but maybe multiple disease, and pregnancy can have an impact on medicine, on specific tests that you need to do. So the trigger of the real world data combined with everything that is evidence-based and indication-specific is what we call our magic, and with our recommender, that is the function that is built in the software that does this, that based on your profile, on your personalized profile, you get a care pathway that is specifically there for you in your situation. Okay. And as we were founded in UCLA, the care system in LA in the US, and by Professor Medical Dr. Daniel Holmes and his team once he started in 2013. And as a spin-off, we started in 2019 our headquarters in Amsterdam and moved from a US-based solution to a European headquartered a young company where we strongly believe that both in US and in Europe, with all the stakeholders that we have in our network and that we collaborate already with, but we need to make that bigger and bigger and bigger to really being able to deliver at scale what we promise. And that is personalized healthcare, lower cost, and a more efficient healthcare for all of us. And most of every discussion that we have currently today are also about accessibility of health for more people. Yeah. And once we have this infrastructure, and we prove here in the Netherlands and in Europe that we can do this, we have not a product, not a service, but we do have like a full ecosystem with a best practice of what stakeholders exactly do you need to copy this around the globe. And of course, the good news is that if we do this good in the Netherlands, we do have a export product, or a stakeholder network as an export example that can be reusable across the globe. And that is where I strongly believe in the value track network that we are a part of, that in collaboration we really can have this impact that we all are looking for. And if you are part of open innovation and really open, then you make it happen. And in our collaborations with hospitals, pharma, health insurance, other startups that are popping up with all kinds of biomarkers that are validated if they do make sense in chronic disease management, it's like a fantastic environment to be in. And for us, regulations, of course, are our core basic thing to comply with. And as others in the discussions today, we really believe in the regulations as a facilitator, not as a blocking issue. Yes, sometimes it's complex, but if you get through it and you do it right, you prove for your own team, but also for all your partners in the stakeholder network, that you are of the level of quality that you can collaborate and that you all together can deliver at the quality level that is needed. Because it's about health, it's about people, it's about you cannot make any mistake because that will harm someone, and patient safety is on top of things. Everybody's mind every day.
Sounds very promising. And one question about the implementation of this system. You already said that it will bring down costs, so it's a big thing also, I think, for the society to invest in something like that. Will it be given to the people, the customers, through the hospital, through the healthcare, through the government, or should they purchase it themselves, or?
Well, as we started now, and everything is possible in the future, but we started really focused and making sure that we fit into all the rules that we have to comply with. So the patients are included, so onboarded by the medical teams. And medical teams are most of the time in hospitals, but also can be general practitioners or can be medical experts that are not specific in a hospital. So it's medical teams that onboard the patients, and once the patients provide their consent, and we do have a data processing agreement that we process the data, but we don't own the data. Okay. So this is also part of a vision where it's called the personal health train, where you have organizations that really make sure that the data is available and they own the data, where their health is using all the data and processing it in a way that it's valuable for the patient care and for supporting the medical teams in making the right decisions at the right time.
Clear. Well, thank you very much. Do you have one last call to action? If you've seen the session today, is there something that you would like?
Yeah, well, it was a high energy session today, and I think the value track network proves that if you put people, virtual and physical, in an environment, that magic happens. And we discussed: is it just a coincidence, or is it because this is what we really need to do, and it's not a coincidence? But we now, as of today, have to take the next step altogether. And so my takeaway for today is let's not start tomorrow, but really start today in taking the next step in the value track and start collaborating at scale.
Well, that's a nice message. Thank you very much, Katinka de Korte, entrepreneur at Dear Health. She was here at the table to talk about the personalized medicine and how we use the data, process the data, ownership of data, because personalized medicine, of course, is very personal also. Then at the table we have Alex Poel, managing partner and co-founder of Ruler. Welcome,
Hello.
Alex. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. Could you explain a little bit what Ruler is or does?
Yes, of course. Ruler is a software application where we track legislation. So regulation is becoming more and more complex, is here to stay. And what we do with the Ruler is making the regulations less complex and more accessible to different stakeholders. Regulations is more generic, is generic, like the GDPR or the MDR. And what we do is break regulations up and make them accessible to different stakeholders, different entities with different needs for regulations.
Could you give an example?
Yeah, we are very strong in the financial services industry for the moment, and the regulation is a generic regulation in the Netherlands and also in Europe. But if you are a bank, you only want to see the regulations for the bank, okay, and not for the insurance companies. So we broke down these regulations, and we make it specific for a bank. And within a bank, you have a mortgages or savings. And for mortgages, the regulations is different than for savings. So we broke that up. So if you want to see what happens in the mortgages area, you can go to that and see immediately what is applicable to you. Okay. And what we also do is that we keep track of publications on regulations. So every day there is publications from regulators, policymakers. They start with Q&As, and we keep track of that. And if it affects the way you need to cope with regulations, we publish that and send out an alert to our clients. In addition, we also track what is coming up for the next 3 to 4 years, so that you're not surprised by the regulations that are coming, which could be affecting the way you need to set up your company.
Because do you have like a glass ball? How do you know what will be coming up in regulations?
Good
do you have
questions.
special contacts in the governments or lawmakers?
It takes a while to set up new regulations. So you can track that since it is announced, and it takes a while to set it up. There's a consultation of it, and before it becomes effective, it takes a couple of years sometimes.
You're just watching there at the beginning.
That's
being announced.
how we track that, yeah.
Okay. Well, then looking at the personalized medicine today, like I already said, and we already heard with the speakers before you, it's very personal. So there's a lot of regulation, legislation, laws, because we want to preserve our privacy, and it's very important. But we also encounter new problems that we didn't know would even exist in the future. So a lot of new regulations, I think.
Yeah. So what we think is that it would be helpful to see what is coming up, and to make sure that new initiatives can easily see what regulations is currently applicable and what is coming up and what is could be a burden for them to develop and to innovate. And by showing that, they can address that timely. And on the other hand, we can take that to policymakers to make sure that regulations adapt to new developments, new initiatives, innovation.
Yeah, because like we had Katinka before you, and she's busy making this system for hospitals, for customers. So she has a lot of need for regulations also. So I could imagine that she doesn't only want to know passively what's coming, but also actively talk with somebody that what she needs as a regulation.
Yeah, and by dividing the regulations, current regulations, into themes, subjects, which specifically addresses her needs, we can make sure that she's always on top of what the regulations tell her to do, where she needs to comply with, and in a more or in a less complex way than always looking at the full text of regulations, which is sometimes thousands of papers.
Yeah, that's way too much. Looking at the session that we had here today, was there something specific that you that stood out for you?
Yeah, what you see is that individual companies cope with regulations, and they all face the same or almost the same burdens if they are developing or innovating. And as mentioned in the session, there is a sandbox method. So you can discuss it with regulators, but if you do that on an individual basis, that's not as strongly as you do it in close cooperation with others. And by using the system we have, Ruler, we can see what are the burdens of the different companies, bring that together and bring that to the regulator in a collaborative way. So that would be the best takeoff of the value track network of today.
No, that's good. Because a call to action, not a call to action.
Well, a call to action is to see with different companies that are struggling with regulations right now, to sit around in a workshop and to see how we can cope with that and help them in making it less complex, and to bring it together to take that to regulators to stay on top of new initiatives.
Clear. And if they have questions,